Welcome everybody to BCCIC's early morning banter about the SMO fund and the upcoming call for proposals. Here with two Mikes and a Dan, and that's because Mike's going to talk twice as much. He's going to be downloading everything he knows about his experience with Global Affairs Canada proposals and with the SMO fund. So, for a bit more detail, why are we doing this, Mike?
Sure. Yeah, no.
Bantering away.
Why are we doing the banter? Well, let's first do the disclaimer. Let's bring in the gong.
Mm-hmm.
This is our gong. This is our disclaimer gong. And we're going to hit it right now, which is to say, very good, Dan, which is to say that if we say anything in the next little while, it is purely our opinion. We are not Global Affairs Canada. We're not government, and this is not our money. But we can try to tell you what we know in the spirit of cooperation because we really want you to get the money.
And we're trying to just shoot from the hip, trying to like talking to organization, what is this like based on experience, based on what we know, the limited amount we do, and this is our best take on it.
In the clearest terms possible with the least jargon. Because when you read the forums or you hear people from Global Affairs Canada talk, their job is to talk with that jargon and those very specific terms and so on, you know, outputs, ultimate outcomes, you know, observe to indicate all that talk. We'll try and interpret it a little bit, especially if you're a small or you're a medium-sized organization and you don't have a team of proposal writers behind you. This is our video for you, right? But again, what was the disclaimer? Do it again, still one more time. Just opinion, right?
Just our opinion.
Just our opinion. Okay, hopefully that's clear.
Cool. So starting right from the start, like what is the money? What is the SMO fund and where did it come from? Just really briefly.
Okay, brief. That's always the trick, isn't it, with me? Keep it brief. So it's $100 million. The government announced it in May, Minister Bibo, and it is specifically for small and medium-sized organizations, and you should know the math. Can we do the math?
All right.
Let's do the math. Okay. $100 million. $79 million is set aside so that you can apply to the development impact window, which opened up a couple of days ago or whenever it did, and which will close for preliminary proposals on December the 21st, meaning you have very little time, meaning as soon as this video is over, you should get working on your proposal. The development impact window is $79 million, but there are two other funds associated with the $100 million. One is called well, it's not got a name yet because it's not official, but it's about innovation. So let's just call it the innovation monies or the innovation fund, okay? It's about $18 million, because these are the numbers that we're using. And then the third amount is for capacity development, and that is a capacity development fund that will be about $6 million. So when you add up 79, 18, and 6, you get different numbers, partially because the calculators in Ottawa work differently than they do here on the West Coast. The numbers don't really matter exact, just think these are the numbers we're given, okay, in terms of approximations. And this fund will probably be run by the Manitoba Council for International Cooperation. Again, it's not confirmed, but that's what's being negotiated, is that this would be run on behalf of the sector for innovation projects, innovative projects, right? And this will be run by Alberta Council on behalf of everybody in Canada, right, to develop the capacity of groups. So how do these three funds fit together? And this is important because you're applying, you're worried right now about applying for this fund because you only got a couple weeks. Right? And the first thing to note is that if you're, this is for projects that are kind of proven. Like you know what you're doing. It does address and it aligns well with the Feminist international policy, and it'll, you know you're on your game, and you think you can spend between $500,000 and $2 million over a period of at least 2 years.
Minimum 2 years.
Yeah. So we do the math on that. That means you got to spend at least $250,000 a year at a minimum on a project for 2 years, or up to even $1 million. Now here's the thing. Should we go deep in? Let's keep going with the math.
Yeah,
but come back and remind me about this because I want to tell people why they should think twice about applying for two. Okay? Can we remember that?
Yeah. Come back think about this.
Okay. In the meantime, let's keep going with the math. $79 million, it's going to be spread out. The entire thing is a pilot. We should even write that in red so people can see how important this is. A pilot means that this entire $100 million is not guaranteed. It's here as an experiment to see whether the small and medium-sized organizations in Canada are actually capable of spending this money well and getting development impact results, meaning you do good work. and the government wants to partner with you in the future. That means that the entire concept is going to go through assessments and processes and audits and organizational audits, and everybody's going to be looking at whether or not you do a good job, right? And then after 5 years, if everybody's been doing a good job and we got lots of results, which I know we're going to get, then they will continue to fund this in the future, right?
But it's not a done deal. It's not going on and on decade after decade.
No, it's all a big experiment, which is why it's actually really important. I mean, heart to heart here, people. This was hard fought for money. We have spent years trying to get this money on your behalf. And now that we've got it, it is important that you show up in a really good way, right? Put in good proposals, do good work, collectively think, and look out for each other, because we want small and medium organizations in Canada to thrive. That's the idea.
We've been talking up small and medium-sized organizations for the last few years, so now it's kind of a moment to prove that we are worth investing this money in, right?
Exactly. It's a rubber hits the road time. And so now's the time, do a good proposal. And here's the thing. This 79 million, let's do the math on 79, shall we? 4 years, 79 million.
5 years, 20 million a year.
Well, the 5th year doesn't count. I'll tell you why. Because it's a 2-year minimum. So let's take 5, and that's your 5th year. 2-year minimum means you got to start your project here to get it done in the 4th and 5th year. So realistically, you're going to see a lot of money go out in terms of contracting in years 1, 2, 3, and 4. And nobody ever spends it evenly, because they expect a lot of proposals in the first intake, even more probable proposals in the second intake, because people get wind of the money, right? They go, oh, you get some money. Oh, where'd you get it? Oh, I'm going to apply. Oh, it's an annual intake. So the idea right now, what we're told, and again, opinion, hit the disclaimer thing again. This is important. We keep saying this. This is what we're told, is that every fall for the next 4 years, there will be an intake, and people will be able to actually apply for the funds. So if I were you, and you're not 100%, you don't have a lot of time between now and December 21st, it's all catching you by surprise, don't panic. There's a second round, a third round, and a fourth round, and you might be wiser to apply well in the second, third, and fourth round.
And this could be a good time to talk about how you might apply for the other funds as well.
Sure, yeah, because they are actually complementary. The idea here is these are complementary concepts. Innovation funds, the money is going to be way smaller. It's going to be capped at about $250,000, okay? And there's going to be a lot more projects. And the idea is that they're a little bit riskier. I mean, the concept's in the title, right?
You're trying something new, yeah.
You're innovative. It's unproven. We haven't tried this yet. And this is a good idea. Government of Canada wants to say, let's make some room for more risk tolerance so we can try some innovative, cool things. And maybe some great ideas will come out because we have to change the way we do development, right? And they're particularly looking at concepts like blended finance. Can you work well with the private sector so we can leverage money, etc.? Look at the trends that they've talked about in their speeches recently. Read the speeches. Also read the mandate letter. Because in the mandate letter, you will find the mandate letter is available online, and you can actually read what Trudeau has told Bibeau that they would like. Okay, and the idea is that they want to be able to reach the poorest and most marginalized, for example. There's all sorts of verbiage in there about feminism that you need to understand. We'll go into that in a minute. Let's do the math first, though. So the 79 million breaks down into the 20 million. This breaks down into 250,000 chunks, and the idea was that you could go into this fund, prove that your innovative idea works really well, and graduate into this fund, pick it up in years 2, 3, or 4, right? And scale it up. And ultimately, if you think like the Global Affairs Canada, you could graduate out of this whole window and branch, and you could go and work with bilateral, where the big money is, like the really big bilateral funds and so on. You know, that's later. But the idea is you could, in theory, you could be a small group, come in with a cool idea, prove it in the innovation fund, graduate to the development fund, and then go, look, this is scalable. Let's scale it up and do this in more than one country, or do this across the board. That's the
And this last fund, the capacity development one, is really about assisting that process, right? Helping people to kind of graduate, get into innovation fund, get beyond it, and ideally go beyond the impact into bilateral as well. That's where this support for groups that improve their game here in Canada comes in.
Because if you're small or you're medium sized, you may not have a whole team of results-based management experts or gender experts at your disposal. So the idea is, if we could, as a group, as as a sector, if we can peer learn from each other, show ourselves best practices, talk about the sustainable development goals and the challenges or new feminist approaches and so on. If we can improve our game, let's take some money aside and make sure that we can do that. And so there'll be an annual conference associated with this where we all get together and we chat with each other and we show each other best practices and we learn. There'll be some money in here for educational institutions to work with them so that we can educate and public outreach and all that. And there'll be some strictly money that's set aside so that people can learn how to do results-based management well, where they can do gender analysis and mainstreaming and understand what feminism is. All that sort of stuff is going to happen in the capacity development window, completely set aside from the other two funds. Run by Alberta, run by Manitoba, run by the government.
And there's definitely some skills, some knowledge you're going to need in order to apply for this development impact one. We're going to get into that pretty soon, I think.
Yeah.
But first of all, do you want to touch on who can actually apply for this one? Zooming into this call for proposals that's coming out, preliminary proposals, December 21st. Who can get in on that?
Yeah. Okay. So here's the thing. It's in the guidelines, but if the guidelines, you're finding it confusing, you have to have the absorptive capacity to handle $500,000 over 2 years. Now, what does that mean, absorptive capacity? It means basically, are you big enough to be able to responsibly spend this money? Okay, because if you're like a tiny little group and you just raised $10,000 and you're doing overseas development assistance and you think you can spend $500,000 well, probably you need to do a reality check and realize you're tiny. Okay, there's tiny, then there's small, then there's medium, and then there's the big ones. And the big ones are all over 10 million, right? With their teams of experts, etc. This funding is catering to small to medium size, which is kind of groups that are in the, think of yourself, if you had a $500,000 a year budget, you're small. And as you grow up to $10 million a year. So you take all of your revenues and are you $10 million a year? Now, if you're a very large institution like a university or something, but you have a subsection or a department that specializes in international development, then they've said, well, let's take a look at the amount of money, and as long as it's not more than $2 million going to international stuff, then you still qualify.
So what do you do if you're smaller than that? Like if say you're a small organization that does want to get on this, what are your options here?
That's a great question, because do not despair. There is some methodology here, right? And what people are saying is that it's called administrative burden, and basically they're saying it's too much work if you're too small. And it's true. The truth is, if you're really small, you got to get you up to speed. You got to do the contracting. There's only so many project officers. You got to
rather work with one organization than several small ones.
Or put them together. This is the idea between a consortium fund. A consortium fund. Is this recording still? Are we still good? Good. Okay. Is you bundle it all together. Okay. And then one person takes the lead, or somebody steps forward and says, "We'll be the lead on this," right? But a bunch of you get together, and this can be really intelligent. Let's say you're working in Uganda, and there's a group right down the road. You get on our map, you get on the BC map, you realize, hey, there's 6 groups working in Uganda. We're all doing sort of similar work. Why don't we get together? So you get together and you put in a consortium proposal because you have affiliations and interests and so on. And you can show the government is very interested in this because this is a way in which we can actually bundle groups and get them to.
And it reduces the hassle and the cost for them. So there's interest in that.
Big time. Yeah.
That's kind of the size of the group. So we're talking that they have to be at least able to spend $500,000 over 2 years, or to form a consortium that could do that. The max is that they don't have a budget that's over $10 million per year. What about? Is there any limitations on where groups are working, or where these projects?
Well, before we go to location, let's just talk about the amount, because people are going to. This is what you're going to be working on, right? I mean, I've done proposals a million times. First thing you think, how much should I ask for? If we do the math on the 80 million, you divide by 4 years, that's 20 million a year. Let's just use that as our math, right? And if everybody applied for the maximum amount, which is 2 million, well, that's only 10 groups in the year 1, 10 groups in year 2, 10 groups in year 3. That's only 40 groups. All the money's gone. 40 groups. Canada is big. We know, for example, that in British Columbia alone, we have on our map at least 578 or something groups that are working internationally. That's just in British Columbia, right? Now you've got Ontario and Quebec and Alberta and the Atlantic and the Prairie provinces. Add all that up, that's a lot of groups could apply for this money. So if you're in government shoes, what would you do? I mean, what would you do?
Well, you'd have to have a pretty good reason if you're going to cancel out a whole bunch of other groups. You're trying to sort of look for, you've got a limited pot, you want to be funding a range of projects. You're going to be looking towards multiple innovative projects rather than just one that's going to soak up all your funds.
Yeah, you want to keep as many people happy as you can, right? So the $500,000 projects, if you come in with a $2 million project that's going to trump 3 other people's ability to participate, you're probably going to get dumped. So my advice, this is critical, right, is don't go and think that you're, got the best project in the whole world and you're going to go for the 2 million, because you're going to reduce your chances of getting the money. Whereas if you come in with a modest proposal that reflects your absorptive capacity, in other words, it reflects how much money you can responsibly spend, that shows that you've done your homework and it's a solid quality proposal, you got a way better chance being modest in this thing than coming in thinking, I'm going to scoop the money, because that's not going to work. There's way too many groups across Canada that want this money. And keep in mind, there's not been a lot of money out of the federal government for small and medium-sized organizations for a long, long time. Everybody is going to want in on this. So my advice, keep it modest, keep it high quality, and show that you know your stuff and that you're not trying to bite off more than you can chew. All right. Even though it looks like you can go to 2 million, I wouldn't do it. I personally, I wouldn't even try at 2 million, but that's just me. I would go in lower. Again, hit the disclaimer again. All opinion. This is all just opinion.
Right. Okay. Right. So who else can go for this? Then we've got a sense of the size and the size of grants you want to go for, the type of proposals I mean.
So that is a big one on this one, is that this is not just CSOs. Now, if we had our way, this would be just for CSOs. It would be for small, medium-sized organizations, the people that have trouble getting money. This is, unfortunately, fortunately, I mean, it depends on how you want to look at it. Private sector can also go for this money. Universities can go for this money. This is an open ball field. So, mind you, if you're private sector, it has to be of a nonprofit nature. So all of your efforts have to be provable that you will make no money on. So the idea is that you would be doing this because you have some kind of leveraged expertise. Probably, in my opinion, the groups that are going to win on that are going to be groups that are both civil society and private sector together, or some intelligent coalitions. That kind of thing is probably going to have more appeal to it than just a strictly private sector group or something. And so in that sense, I think it probably some of the winning proposals are going to have intelligent partnerships and collaborations that are going to be able to show strategic leveraged advantage, which is co-finance. That's a lot of words for just saying if we put our efforts together, we could probably have more impact than if we tried this on our own. That's a trend these days, and it's a good trend in many.
What about in terms of where people are working? Are there still is there restrictions on where projects are funded under this?
No, the trend for the last 14, 15 years has been towards this idea of some priority countries. Sometimes there's 25, sometimes there's 14, whatever. It goes up and down, and there's a list. That list, my understanding, is gone. It has to be any country that is in the ODA list, Official Development Assistance. Okay, and that list is on the Global Affairs site, and you must look up your country, and you must make sure, and do not assume that it's on the list. No matter what, do not assume that it's on the list, and you'll see some surprising countries that are on that list. Countries you never would have thought would be on the list, but they're on that list. So go check the list. Yes, my country qualifies. And then after that, you're going to want to also look at which groups are you working with, because there are certain higher priority groups to work with, which brings us right into the Feminist International Assistance Policy. Shall we go there?
Yeah, sure. So let's get into what are the themes you're working on as well. So not just where you're working, but what kind of groups are you looking for in terms of the kind of proposals, projects?
Yeah. So the Feminist International Assistance Policy was released in the spring. When was that released? That was in June, wasn't it?
I think it's around there.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly the date. Point is that had been worked on for a long time, and that is a fundamentally new approach, something Canada is very proud of. We are the first country to put out a Feminist International Assistance Policy, and that means that somewhere along the line here, all projects are going to go through this lens, are going to be seen through this gender lens. And this is not the standard gender lens, theoretically, that we've been looking at for 20, 30, 40 years. It's more the idea that you have a feminist approach around women and girls not just being the beneficiaries of your work because they are traditionally the most marginalized and so on in the developing world, but also that they are actually the most effective actors or agents of change. And therefore, if you wanted to solve a problem, it would make the most sense if you worked with this particular sector, okay, of not sector, but this particular demographic of people, women and girls. Okay, so not just beneficiaries, actors of change, and also that you would, according to the Paris Agreement, you'll. By the way, this is all referenced in the application. So if you see the words Paris Agreement, you know what it is. You got to go read it and figure out, well, what are they talking about? Because the basic premise behind the Paris Agreement is that beneficiaries, the people that we're trying to work with, should be the leaders and the ones that set the agenda for their own developmental path. Right? Whether that's at the country level or at the village level. If you're going to work with women and girls, you want them to be the beneficiaries and agents of change, then you ought to be talking to them and consulting with them and working with them from day one, right? So that they're integrated in every aspect. Not only that, but if you're going to do it in a feminist way, and again, it's not just simple, oh, I'm a feminist, right? Because I think I'm a feminist. There's 22 schools of feminism. There's intersectional feminism, first, third way. It goes on and on. You got to get your act together on what exactly is your theory of change and how does feminism fit into it and how are you emulating and manifesting a feminist theory of change. And there's more to that than just sex disaggregated data or, oh, we got some women on our board. That's not going to fly, right? You're actually going to have to be able to articulate it.
It's about explaining where you're coming from, how you understand this, and how your projects link into that.
And a lot of it's going to boil down to power dynamics and showing that you understand the history of the country. You understand it at different scales. You understand that at the village level or whatever, this is how the dynamics manifest, and this is how your project is going to shift that for women and girls and make the world a better place through them as actors, etc. There's going to be a bunch of theory, and you got to get up to speed on it. Like if you think your proposals are not going to get through, not going to fly, because everything is pointing with this minister and this prime minister and the Feminist International Assistance Policy, women and girls, it's like a mantra. You're going to have to go, women and girls.
Because this is what we get into now. Like, say you're an organization that does that it does fit within the size of the organization, the type of proposal, and it's working in the countries that are ODA countries whose themes fit within the themes that are contained in the Feminist International Assistance Policy. What do you need to get this money? What do you actually need to have in your proposal? What do you need to really focus on?
Theory of change. So here's the thing. First thing you should do, the first thing I would do is I would get it. Well, actually, the very first thing I would do, I would get onto the portal. There's this thing called the partnership portal, and you got to get on there and register. And here's a little hint. Is that they actually can tell the day that you registered and you started to put information in. So if you suddenly in the last 6 hours suddenly say, oh, it's time I should actually get my proposal in and start to register and realize there's a few hiccups along the way, and you claim later on that, oh, I've been at this for weeks, well, they can tell that you got on at the last second. So number one thing when this video is over is get onto the partnership portal, register, do all the basics, and then contact your development partner, your southern partner, and get talking to them about all of these so that you are working with them in true partnership. And the other one is don't assume that the word partnership doesn't have a whole pile of theory behind it as well. Go read the Coady Institute's excellent work on this, or read up on what is partnership. Then go and read the CSO partnership policy between the Government of Canada and civil society that only just came out, the revised edition in September, and read up on that too. So you understand, okay, I'm going to partner with my developing partner. We're going to follow the Istanbul Principles, okay, which are the kind of the rubric within which all of us in this sector have agreed internationally constitutes good practice, right? So you're going to have to be familiar with that. Okay, I get that. I get the Istanbul Principles. I understand what working with government is in good partnership, right? I understand the Feminist International Assistance Policy, and I'm working closely with my development partner right now, and then you're going to tackle the thing you're going to then do probably is tackle your theory of change. Now, theory of change. How are we doing for time, Karina? Are we still okay? Are we okay with this? You think, are we going at a pace you think that's still useful to people here?
I think so.
Okay. She's our check-in down.
Good.
Make sure.
It's got a back.
Okay, so theory of change. Let's just try to be brief on theory of change. Basically, the theory of change, and this is important because, by the way, we argued for theory of change. Then another thing here is that the whole concept here of like feminism and environmental sustainability, this is all stuff we demanded. It's not like they came up with it. Hey, let's be feminist. We've been arguing that feminism as the underlying lens through which we should do development work, that's stuff that civil society has been advocating for 20, 30, 40 years. So when people are actually doing this and you're going, why do I have to tackle this feminism? That's actually what we wanted, right? Same thing with environmental sustainability. The other one is to take them seriously. Like on environmental sustainability, it's really easy to read a proposal where you person's brushing it off and going, our project will not have any environmental impact. Well, that's basically not true. Like any project has some kind of environmental impact, and the environmental specialists are going to be looking to take a look-see as to whether or not you're taking it seriously. So you should go through the handbook on the environmental impact and recognize what triggers an environmental impact assessment. If you build a school in Uganda and it happens to be more than 10 meters by 10 meters, well, that triggers the environmental impact, and you better have an environmental impact, so don't brush it off.
We also want gender analysis. Again, coming back to that point about feminist assistance policy, this whole feminist focus, having a gender analysis built into your proposal is also key.
Yeah, and a gender analysis that is not just your analysis, but one that includes the women and girls as the beneficiaries in the consultation process. And that's actually, you got to prove that. Like you can't just start making this up in your office in Canada. You're going to have to be on the phone with your development partner, and hopefully you've already done your homework on this. And if you haven't done your homework on this, then my advice is, again, wait this one out for a year. Go quickly do all your homework, and it could take a year to actually properly consult with your partner, meet the women and the girls, actually have the real conversations, and do it right. I mean, that's what we're trying to do. And again, let's go back to the principle I said at the very beginning. Let's do this right. Let's get this right, because this entire thing's a pilot. So don't go running in there to get the money because you need the money, and we all need money. But go in there, do this right, because we're trying to protect this money for the future for everybody, right?
You want to analyze things.
Yeah. Where were we though? Oh yeah, theory of change.
Theory of change. We're just going to recap a little bit what we're talking about.
Yeah, so why don't you do a recap?
You're good. Like, we're just saying, what do we actually need to do? So, getting on this partnership portal, it's open, it's online, it's global affairs, get on this straight away. Contact your partners to begin to have these discussions around how the work you're doing fits into the international assistance policy. Doing the background reading, because there's a lot of homework that sort of has to go into this, understanding the key documents of the partnership policy, the Istanbul Principles, environmental impact, gender analysis, how you're approaching feminist approach, and I think also human rights.
Human rights. Yeah. An HR approach, right? So understanding that if you're going to, for example, tackle women and girls, you're going to do it through the human rights lens. That human rights at the bottom of it is part of your analysis and in your theory of change. So let's just chat about the theory of change, because the theory of change idea is different than the logic model. The logic model says we're going for this impact and we're going to do it through these outputs, and there's going to be intermediate impacts. By the way, if that all sounds like jargon, it's well thought out jargon, and it's all part of results-based management. If you're a small, medium-sized organization, this is all brand new. You never heard of results-based management? Well, you actually should go and read the RBM manuals, understand how a logic chain works. That's the agreed upon international standard, is to have a logic frame, log frame. And before you throw it out, go, that's just weird. You actually should read it, understand that it's designed because of Western empiricism that we think we're going to actually do this is going to end up there. Right? I mean, that's dumb, but it's not how the world works. But it is what you need to do if you're in government and you're trying to remain accountable for money. You have to show there was good thought, there's evidence, there's a plan, right? So that if we do this, we do that, we do this. Here's the assumptions, here's the risks, and here's the indicators along the way that we will end up with the long-term impact that we're all wanting, right? And you need to prove that you actually thought that through. That's the logic chain. And that's all that stuff about ultimate incomes. And so, in fact, if I was writing the proposal, I would go straight to that. Forget about all your rationale, forget about everything else. Sit down with your development partner and go, what's our theory of change and what's our logic? Okay. And then work out where's the evidence for the premises and the assumptions. And I would not like this, they're even giving you a clue when they say you can take up to 7 pages of a 12-page application on theory of change. I mean, what does that tell you? It tells you that's important.
Yeah, right? They want to understand your work and understand what you're thinking is going to go.
Especially in the preliminary part. In the preliminary proposal, they're not asking you for all the details. They're wanting to go, is your head on right? Like, are you got your head on right? Do you understand this stuff? Like, and if you understand this stuff and there's evidence and so on, you can prove that your theory of change is viable. It's a good theory of change, right? So first thing I do is read up on theory of change on the internet. There's lots of info on there. And then start working through with your development partner, what is a good articulation of our theory of change for the project that we want to do that's going to benefit women and girls and have a feminist approach. That's the challenge right there. That's going to take a little bit of time. Right?
And bringing gender in is key. Once again, we're just kind of repeating this again and again, but this is what we're hearing is that in that theory of change, in your logic model, you need to be able to show how your project is going to be having an impact, especially on gender equality.
Yeah.
So not just
power
that it's
dynamics,
going to benefit women or that they're going to be in charge of the project, but actually it's going to shift gender inequality and increase gender equality.
Yeah, and then add in an environmental lens, add the SDGs in there, the integration of it, and human rights, right? And keep the politics of Ottawa in mind regarding some of the things we've recently said around climate change, around women, etc. There's a lot of things we just recently announced. You got to keep your eye on that.
So there's a lot of hoops to jump through, right?
Yeah.
And they're hoops there for a reason. We've been saying that these are hoops we asked for, essentially.
Yeah.
These are the quality sort of filters.
Yeah.
But looking at an organization that's looking at this, they're for the first time and wondering like, what's my chances of actually landing this?
They're not bad. They're not bad. Like, I think tone it down in terms of the money you're asking for. Coming in around the minimums is going to help you, in my opinion, because that's going to mean more groups are going to be able to get it.
The minimum ask in terms of the money you're asking for. Right?
Yeah. Don't go in and ask for go in and ask for $2 million if you want. Good luck. But if I were you, I'd be going in and asking for smaller amounts of money, spreading butter around a little bit more because it's a big country, and there's regional needs as well. The money has to get spent around the country. It can't all be spent, in Ottawa, Toronto, Montreal. It's going to have to get moving around. So that's a challenge right there in terms of the numbers game, right? You just imagine just taking 40 proposals of $2 million each. That's going to be problematic, right? So it's way easier if you could spread it out. The other thing maybe too just is I'm just trying to zoom in on, like, a lot of groups might get psyched out, right? Because I got to know all the Paris Agreement. I got to read all that. I got to, you don't have to do all that. If you got a good solid project and you're good at your game and you got a lot of community support, keep in mind why the government is really keen and we're really keen on small and medium-sized radio. You got a lot of visibility, a lot of community support. You often a lot of love. Like, people can put an enormous amount of volunteer effort in, and you should reflect that. See those that don't. This is not a time as a small and medium-sized organization to be humble. You want to put in there, we have a tremendous visibility. If we do something, the entire community knows, right? Or our in-kind contribution, provable, auditable in-kind contribution is huge. Because you're going to leverage an enormous amount with us versus another group that does mail-in and stuff. Like, we get a lot of people involved. These are your advantages, and you should put them
as a small and medium-sized organization, right? This is what we do best.
Oh, and there's tons of evidence. There's tons of evidence that this is where you guys rock. Like, this is where small and medium organizations are fantastic. Because you're in small town somewhere, and everybody in town knows you. Because somebody locally got interested in some country somewhere, and they're doing great work, and everybody loves them, right? That has huge, that has a lot of, that reinforces the role of Canadians making a difference, which is the motto every year for ODA. Right?
And what I'm also hearing you saying before was that, even if a group feels like they're not quite there, they haven't done their background reading, like there's still a chance for them to, if they don't get this one, there could be other proposals coming up, either through the Innovation Fund or through next year.
In fact, I would recommend to those groups, don't panic right now. It's not the end of the world. This intake is going to come and go December 21st, but there will be another one in a year. And there's going to be a lot of opportunities with the Innovation Fund and the capacity development to up your game before you try to enter the window. And keep in mind that the competition's high on the window. So you don't want to kind of come in half-baked, with not a very good proposal. Or you haven't talked to your development partner in 3 months because you've been busy, or 9 months, and you're going to try and whip all this off in the next 2 weeks. I basically think that's a bad idea. The winning proposals in this first intake are probably going to be the ones. This is, again, where's the opinion thing? And this is purely opinion, right? Is that the winning proposals are probably going to be the well-established small and medium-sized organizations and there's plenty of them that have proven track records over the last God knows how long, but they're good at their game. They're regularly in contact with their development partners. They've already done their feminist analysis. They already have a theory of change. Everything's lined up. Mm-hmm. Those groups are lined up, and they're out there. I know they're out there. I talk with them all the time. They're on their game, and they're ready to put in a proposal, and bang, that proposal is going to get in the next 2 weeks. If you don't fit that, then you might be thinking, you might do well to think, let me just watch. And I'm going to come in on the second round. I'm going to take some of the capacity building workshops. I'm going to play with the innovation fund, and maybe I'll come in a year or 2 years, because you can have a higher chance, right?
So say you're one of those groups that are like pretty well poised right now. This is like the first time to do like a Global Affairs Canada proposal.
Yeah.
We talked about what they're looking for. Like kind of based on your experience, we've applied for a bunch of these before. Like, what are the key things that you want to be thinking of in order to land this, to get this money?
I would pay a lot of attention to words, and not assume that a word doesn't have a lot of meaning behind it. So let me just take the word, in theory of change, the word assumptions. Well, you're going to go, well, that's just an assumption. Well, no, there's a whole bunch of meaning behind putting down your assumptions. It's got to do with risk tolerance and being able to, you don't want to not show your assumptions. What people want is for you to show your assumptions, because that means you thought about it, right? It's not you trying to say nothing's going to happen, everything's going to be okay. So like risk mitigation, you don't want to go in there and say, hey, don't worry, it's all going to be okay. We're good to go. Because that means that you haven't been thinking about it. So what they're looking for are people that are sophisticated enough to know that the development game is not easy, and that not all projects win and do well, and that's not the problem. What they don't want is people going in blind who haven't thought about stuff. So what I would do is go in and go, okay, I got to take a lot of these sentences seriously. What do they actually want to know? So if they want to know about environmental impact, tell them about your environmental impact and think about it. It's not like there's going to be no environmental impact. There will be. Same thing with gender. Same thing with human rights. Take it seriously. Look at it and go, what is the human rights impact of what we're doing? Are we actually ever addressing it or not? And if you're not, be humble and take a couple steps back, do some more reading, look at some of the best practices, and up your game, right? Through the capacity development.
What about like upping your game in terms of getting more information? Like
good idea. Like good point.
How can you do that?
Yeah. The way it works is that, pardon me, bit of a cough, but the government has to maintain transparency and equality throughout the process as soon as they put out a call. So if you think you can get on the phone and talk to somebody in Ottawa, ain't gonna happen. They do not talk during a call, and it's because they don't want to give anybody preferential treatment, and that's good. That's actually something we should be happy about, right? Nobody gets the inside scoop, in theory. So the point is that they give you up until, I think, December the 1st, which is in like a day or two, to ask questions on a portal so that everybody can see the same questions and everybody gets access to the same answers. And you can't get at them in any other way. And after December the 1st, or whenever this thing closes, it's like a cone of...
And that's Friday, right?
It's like Friday.
I think it's like, Korean's like 9 in the morning or something.
There's like no time left, right?
Yeah.
So get your dumb question, what you think are dumb questions, just get them in there right now, because they're not dumb. Those questions are basic. Like, how do I open up the first PDF thing? It doesn't function. Ask that question. Everybody else can see the answer. Or before you phone us up or read through all of the questions. There's already a bunch of them answered, right? That'll tell you a lot. Go through that and get your questions in by Friday. And then after that, know that the cone of silence will drop and you will not get help 24 hours ahead of the deadline to figure out how to register on the Canadian Partnership Program. You're going to be on your own. You're going to be out of luck. So do all those basics now. Read the frequently asked questions. Read the background information. Get in touch with your Southern partner. Work on your theory of change and do your gender analysis and start getting on it. It's not an easy process, actually, to get it done between now and the 21st. It's only 15 pages, but every line's got to count. The other one is I would not repeat yourself in that 15 pages if I were you. You only got 15 pages, right? So every word has got to count. Look at how many pages it takes them to explain to you how to write 15 pages. It's probably at least 15 pages just telling you how to write 15 pages. So you can see how quickly every sentence goes by. So I would measure every sentence, make sure every single one counts, and don't repeat yourself between the sections, like theory of change and your logic chain. Those are two separate processes. You know, make each one count. And if you don't know how to do this stuff, again, relax. Money's not going to get all spent in 1 year. You can come around the second time.
So you're talking about get hold of your partners, get hold of government now. What about other CSOs, other folks in our sector?
Well, there's going to be an assumption by many groups that you're in competition, because you are actually. It's a competitive process. So the top proposals are going to win. So if there isn't enough money and there's too many proposals, the best ones will win. Okay. So you're going to get scored, and they're going to use matrices and stuff like that. I think they are. I mean, I don't know, but that's what I'm told. Disqualified. Competitive process. But here's the thing about competition is that everybody is thinking in a different way these days. And the trend is to think, well, how does my proposal leverage and complement another person's proposal? So let's say you know that there's another group working in Guatemala, and you're working in Guatemala. It's kind of dumb if you haven't talked to each other, if you're not aware of each other's work, right? It would look way better if you said, we're doing this, and it's a good idea. And here's our theory of change. And they're doing this, and there's their theory of change. And look, together we have way more impact, right? So that's going to the person who you're theoretically in competition with, and you're getting smart. You're going like, together, let's talk. Let's figure this out. This is a better way to do things anyway, right? So small and medium-sized organizations, I would advise you to look on our map, look around, who's working in the country that you're wanting to work with, who's working in the sector or the theory of change that you're wanting to work in, and can you collaborate or show connections and leverage points? Or could you even collaborate in coalitions? It gets a little more complicated, but that doesn't stop you. Like this idea of let's just hunker down and be in secret and not share anything. That's not really where we want to go with this. We want the small, medium-sized organizations in Canada to learn from each other, to be able to share some of their failures and their successes, and for the whole sector to get better. And so that Canadians rock when it comes to doing international development work, which is what we want. That's what we want. Everybody up there. Yeah. So, I mean, I hope people will think like that. The other one, too, is that maybe just to emphasize again that it's a pilot, right? Pilot means that we're going to get tested. They're going to put us through the ringer in 4 years and go, well, you know, did you actually get good results? Which means that you should be thinking in your logic chain and in your theory of change right now. What is the provable result, right? And how do I measure that with indicators that make sense? That whole thing about don't brush that off and go, oh, indicators, of course, right? Think of really good indicators in your proposal right now that are going to prove that you did do a good result, so that we can prove all this later. It's going to be very important that we prove that this money was very well spent, so we get more of it, so we can continue this.
You try to build possibilities for demonstrating success right at the start of this project.
Yeah.
And what about any way you could screw this up? Is there any do not do's?
Well, one, I mean, big one is you could screw it up by asking for too much money and just get knocked out, or by not being realistic about your absorptive capacity, getting knocked out. Like everybody's saying, you can't, how do we take you seriously, right? Like biting off more than you can chew, you're going to get, that's a screw up, right? The second screw up might be by actually not like brushing off what is very important to the funder. And I think we went it over, right? If you brush off the feminism, gender, women and girls thing and go, I got that covered. We do disaggregated data. I got 3 women on my board. Everything's good. That is like, you just screwed up, right? Because there's a lot of depth there. And you're way better off admitting and being a bit more humble about it and going, yeah, maybe we have an all-women board. Does that mean we have a feminist attitude, right? And actually looking through that a little deeper.
What does that mean?
What does that actually mean? Like, get into it. Get into it and read about it. That's the other way. And the same thing with environment, human rights, the sustainable development goals. If you don't know what those are, I'd back out of this particular round. I'd catch up on that and come in the second round and do your homework. Because the sustainable development goals are the underlying rubric. It's mentioned in everything now. In the Feminist International Assistance Policy, it's even in the application, right? So if you don't know what those are, you don't know how they're interlinked, how they're universal, how they're aspirational, you haven't read that, then read up on our webpage and get some of our info that we've been pumping out like crazy so that people are well set up to get this money.
Right.
We should call it, right?
I think we're at time on this.
All right, because we've been ranting.
It's been a good rant.
All right, look, so the purpose of the rant, we'll just go over it one more time, is that if you want to be able to ask questions, there's going to be likely a question and answer session, which again will be disclaimered at the ICN level for everybody in Canada next week. This rant was just to try to help you at this initial stage to answer some of the basic questions about what this money is and what it is, and it's all just opinion.
And we really want you to get this money. That's the whole reason behind this. It's there now. We've been fighting for it. We really want people to get it, to rock it, so that this goes beyond the pilot. This is something that we can continue to leverage and just do good work out in the world with.
Yeah, exactly. Because we think you guys are great. So get this money.
Awesome. All right. Thanks for the time.